Me, Matt Hatton, founding partner at Transforma Insights, back again. This has been quite a feast of IoT today, and here we are for the dessert course, talking about the connectivity landscape. Now, I've been working in the IoT for most of my 25 years as an industry analyst, and this is probably the most interesting time to be talking about connectivity. You've got things like 5G arriving, you've got low power wide area networks really being rolled out, you've got 2G and 3G networks being switched off, you've got eSIM, you've got localization capabilities that enables, you've got hyperscalers coming into the market, Microsoft and AWS doing very interesting stuff. You've got features like network function virtualization that open up a lot of capabilities. You've got private networks and the spectrum being made available for those. What a time to be alive. I want to talk through that little list of topics and a whole bunch of other things with some of my peers in the industry, and I would like to welcome them one at a time on here, and they can introduce themselves. So first up, Niall. Well, actually, you've seen him already, but hopefully he'll pop up as if by magic.
Hi Matt. Thanks very much for anyone who actually paid attention earlier for my previous session. I run product strategy at Pelion. So like Matt, I think my entire career has been in the IoT space, always focused around connectivity. So one of the founders of the UK European MVNO Stream Technologies many years ago that transitioned into ARM and is now one of the core competencies of Pelion.
Awesome, thank you. And David from JT IoT.
Hi Matt, David here. So my name is David Lindblad, and I'm working as Senior IoT Product Manager at JT IoT. So we just got bought released from our mother Jersey Telecom, and bought by a UK capital fund to be able to deliver even more services now to the IoT market.
Just literally in the last week or two, if I remember rightly, right?
Yeah, it was 1 week ago.
Yeah, there we go. So
new, fresh, in new clothes.
Fantastic. And Benoit from Sierra.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Benoit. I'm working at CRLS for almost 9 years now, but my telecom background is almost 25 years old. So at that time, I was working on 2G mobile phones at Sagem, and very rapidly, I focused on the machine-to-machine market. At the time, IoT was not a buzzword in 2008, and so for almost 9 years, I'm focusing on IoT with the launch of appealing services that we might speak about it in the next few minutes.
Excellent, Benoit. You might have the longest span in the telecoms industry. Hope we can take advantage of that. And finally, Sylwia, who I think was having some technical issues, but hopefully has those technical issues resolved. Hello, Sylwia.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Right, technology. Sylwia Kechiche from GSMA Intelligence. I'm the principal analyst looking after IoT Enterprise. So GSMA Intelligence is part of GSMA. I think everybody knows GSMA, and Matt, we've been working in IoT for quite a while now. So you're looking after IoT and pretty much looking at what's happening in the space, particularly when it comes to operators. We focus right now on the private networks opportunity, what 5G can bring to IoT, and it's a really interesting space. So I look forward to a discussion today.
Excellent. First place I'm going to start is value chain. This is something that gets raised every now and then. Who's jockeying for position where in the value chain? David, I'm going to come to you for no other reason that you're the first person in order in my list. But how do you see that changing? Obviously, JTIoT now a new entity. So how do you see yourself positioning yourself in the value chain? Are you do you feel like you're being squeezed? Do you feel like you're going after other bits of the value chain? How do you feel that's working out?
No, I think that the business has never been better than now for JTIoT, and the trend I see in the market is that like the cloud suppliers is getting a much more bigger impact on the IoT industry. They are trying to take more and more parts to simplify the services for the end customers, and we see that in all areas. but also new technologies is deploying to the market who enables for suppliers like IoT to exist. So I think it's still a position for orchestrations players and enabler who make this. The technology exists in the market. You can do whatever you want with the technology, but it's not simple yet. And I think the one that understand this, they are the winner. So we have to work together to make the services more simpler for the customer. And for us, it's never been a better business than we have today. I think that is because we are focusing on a specific, and we try to work with partners around here.
Okay, interesting. Now, Benoit, actually, I want to come to you next. Now, Sierra's position is slightly different, right? So you have hardware, and you have connectivity, and software platforms, and actually, you've been doing quite a lot of work on integration with hyperscalers, and indeed offering full end-to-end solutions. So you've got probably maybe a little more insight into the entirety of the value chain than most others have. How do you see things playing out?
Yeah, that's right. CROLS has moved quite significantly in the value chain for the past 5 years. Until 2015, we were heavily focusing on the hardware. I mean modules and gateways. So we were well known to be the #1 supplier of cellular modules for the IoT market. And for a few years now, we have moved in the value chain, adding some connectivity services to our portfolio. So in 2015, basically, we've acquired a few virtual MVNO. And we've invested a lot in our core network infrastructure, expanded our roaming sponsors with a global reach now, with in more than 160 countries, so really global coverage. And from my perspective now, the value for Sierra is to combine together hardware and connectivity services to provide what we call zero-touch service provisioning. So with our solution and our embedded SIM, so we will speak about eSIM afterwards, but with our module and embedded connectivity, it has never been so easier to launch connectivity applications for our customers. So here I'm speaking about modules, but as well about gateways with embedded SIM. So you don't have any issue to activate the SIM with your module or your device, with your private APN, and secure the communication channel to the cloud. So all this is now seamlessly integrated, and that's really a big step forward in this customer journey simplification.
Okay, good stuff. I should emphasize for the benefit of the audience, I'm going to ask a few questions, and then I'd be delighted if you'd pitch in with a few. There's a question box that you should be able to tap your questions in and come to me with those. That would be great to hear any of those. Okay, I've got a very long list of questions and not a huge amount of time, so I'm going to switch on to a slightly different topic. Niall, sustainable differentiators, right? There's a whole load of connectivity providers out there, of which there are a number here on the panel, and I guess Sylwia is representing the mobile network operators as well. So, how do you see differentiation? Where's the opportunity for differentiation?
Yeah, I think if you look back 5 years ago, the connectivity marketplace was rife for a period of consolidation, and it really showed that MVNOs and other players were really going to struggle in the market, and it pushed that differentiation value first sale approach very heavily, and it caused a lot of the players to really aggressively think, how can they survive in the market, how can they win more attractive business, and it is through moving away from just being a price per gigabyte per region player and actually stepping into the value chain and offering more value. I look at the IoT MVNO space as basically differentiate or die. Essentially, you will have your longevity will be a lot shorter if you're just going to maintain and just be a reseller of the MNO's capabilities. So I look at eSIM as being one of those foundational capabilities that allow the MVNOs to not so much take control, but change their model into being a bit more of a channel provider into the operators and actually becoming a much more of this exchange of profiles for the enterprises, helping enterprises work in a more regulated fashion as they move into new markets, because the MVNOs have had that experience for many years. But also on top of that differentiation is that, within Pelion, we have a myriad of technologies. We have our connectivity infrastructure, our device management, our edge management capabilities. And really over the last year to 18 months, we've seen the buying behavior and the customer journey change from 3 independent people of an organization evaluating these components to being product-led innovation. So, someone coming to us and saying, hey, I want to deploy a product that needs to do X. And the concerns they have, cellular connectivity is one of them in the background. They basically say, okay, I trust the networks are going to exist. I want to make sure it's as flexible as possible for my product, but I want to be able to understand how to update the device, and I want to be able to update the firmware. I want to update the applications that are running on the device and utilize cellular connectivity within that. And having that single orchestration point for a connected device is where the MVNOs and the connectivity providers will slowly go. I think Sierra are doing it with the Octave platform very similarly, and working with the hyperscalers, because if you look at the large incumbents who are trying to become orchestrators in their region, like Volkswagen signing deals with AWS, they're moving cloud first from their perspective. They're asking AWS, who is your partnership for this type of problem I have? So I think it really becomes about becoming a conduit between the cloud and the the CSPs.
I think there's a very interesting topic in there about differentiators for MVNOs. And actually, as it happens, this morning I was writing a report on exactly this topic. So things like cloud integration or granularity of billing or vertical capabilities, all sorts of capabilities in there. Sylwia, I want to bring you in now because you haven't had a chance yet.
Sure.
Mobile network operators, though, how do they see the question of differentiation? Are you okay to speak for the MNOs? I mean, as the GSMA rep, I'll put you on the spot to do that. But if you can give some views on that.
Sure. I'm GSMA Intelligence, but I guess
of course, okay.
GSMA, Just to make it clear that IoT ecosystem is very complex and it's very fragmented, and as we heard from Benoit, operators and providers are moving up and down the value chain, right? So nobody is really providing just one and single thing anymore, and there's a vast amount of partnerships and collaboration between operators and multiple different players within the ecosystem to provide a solution. So actually, we run enterprise focus survey where we ask enterprises a lot of questions around IoT. And when we ask them, who would you work with? What do you want? They still say they want bespoke solutions. So this is one of the key things. You need to be able to offer bespoke solution. I think 28% of enterprises said so. But when they're choosing IoT providers, so that's for the end-to-end solution, number one is and the factors that they look out for is security of solution, ability to offer bespoke solution, price, network coverage, and brand reputation. So, obviously there's a role to play, for operators to partner with others to, not everybody is able to acquire vertical expertise to be able to offer those bespoke solutions, but, to partner with different providers to offer, let's say, healthcare related solutions, so on. But quite a lot of approaches, and I think what Niall mentioned is all about value. So you need to be able to prove value. I need to explain what is that IoT brings over. And as we again ask enterprises, why do you deploy IoT? Majority of them deploy to enable digital transformation. So 63% of enterprises said so. It is really key. Being able to help enterprises to digitize in order to survive, because COVID-19 has shown that if you are not online, if you're not able to track and trace where your products are, you're not able to ensure workers' safety and security, that's very, very tough. And operators have a role to play. it really depends on the capabilities, it depends where they are, it depends on a lot of different factors. But the role of orchestrator, for sure, some of the operators are also trying to enter this space.
Okay, interesting.
So, Matt, can I say something? Or should we?
I was just going to come back to you, David, but yes, do jump in.
So I think, when I started here 10 years ago, I think what I see today is a shift of power, the shift of power to the customer. And I really like that. We see that it started with that Cisco, Jasper, and Ericsson, they give the possibility to do orchestration, a bit of orchestration, eSIM. Now the customer receives the SIM, they own the SIM. And we see with the radio frequencies now, you can build your own radio network in your exhibition hall if you want. So I think that's what I like with this. It's the power shift of the power to the customers, and you need actors here who can help the customer to put this puzzle together, because it's complex. The technology is there, but it's complex, and I think that's the competitive advantage here.
But the barriers to entry are coming down. The complexity is coming down. I mean, 5 years ago, if you'd said, "I've got my own core network," as a MVN, I'd say, people would have been impressed with that. And you could have traded on that as a differentiator. Today, not so much. It becomes more difficult to differentiate, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think technology exists there, and you can integrate, but you need the money, and you need experience and the knowledge, and you need the willingness to do it also. So you need actors who do a certain part of this for the enterprises, eSIM integrations or building core networks. I don't know if that should be to the end customer to do. Maybe they want to buy that from an orchestrator who do it for them and pay them in another way. So yes, the technology exists, but it's still not easy to use it because it's fragmented. And I think that's what the cloud suppliers see today. That here is the market where we can do optimization.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just to add, and actually going back to that, is when we ask enterprises what are the key challenges to IoT adoption, is integration with legacy technologies, and especially IT, then security and data privacy, and number 3 is cost. And this hasn't changed year on year for the past 3 years, is the same. What we've seen increasing, and this is really interesting, is the employee internal resistance to adopting IoT. So great, enterprises want to deploy IoT at the C level because they see the value that it can bring to the enterprise, but the actual people that have to work with these technologies, they're not necessarily always happy about it. So change management as you go through this process is also very, very key.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have to move on to a slightly different subject now with 1 hour in time. Benoit, can I come to you on low power wide area networks? Okay, so the arrival of, I'm going to think specifically about NB-IoT and LTE-M rather than LoRa and Sigfox, but how do you feel those change the competitive dynamics? Obviously, they're new technologies, and so you've got all the issues associated with that, but do you see them changing how competition in the market works?
Yes, absolutely. So I think we have 2 topics to raise with LPWA. The first one is from a technology perspective. So there is much more complexity to manage LPWA communications. There is a huge interoperability challenge between the edge device, the module capability, the network capability. If you want to enter into low power saving modes, you need to negotiate somehow between the module and the network, some paging cycle, the capability to enter in EDRX mode to extend the paging cycle, or eventually you need to activate a PSM mode if it's supported by both device and network. So from a technology perspective, the interoperability is a first challenge. Then from a protocol perspective as well, if you want really to sustain this type of low power communication and low bandwidth communication, you need to optimize the potential overhead which will come in addition to the payload that you want to transmit. So here you need to adapt eventually the protocol that you want to use, and you need to pay attention to the global amount of communication and eventually the triggers which will generate the communication. So that's from the technology perspective. From a business perspective, I think, so you mentioned LoRa or Sigfox. I think this was a kind of revolution in the business model, the capability to invoice based on messages. So based on data points or based on the payload, which is meaningful for the customer. You have a telemetry point to upload. You have 8, 10 telemetry point to upload every day, then you know perfectly in advance how much it will cost you at the end of the month. With a cellular subscription, it's much more complex, right? You need to encapsulate your payload into a global communication stack, so you don't know how many megabytes at the end of the month will be invoiced. So with LoRa and Sigfox, it was a kind of revolution to bring this new business model, and so this is something that has inspired some of us. So Sierra Wireless, we've launched a specific billing model for LPWA based on messages as well. And so this is part of the Octave value proposition that Niall mentioned from Sierra Wireless. So we aim to orchestrate the data from the edge device to the cloud with appropriate protocol using this LPWA communication. So from a technology perspective and from a business perspective, it's really a revolution from my perspective.
Very interesting. Niall, I want to come to you. So message-based pricing, I mean, it's shifting to away from, effectively from a per megabyte plan to something that's a bit more appropriate to how developers might actually want to consume data. That's effectively what Benoit's talking about. Is that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we'll always have the 75% transactional. This is what I need and this is what I expect from the traditional connectivity world, price per megabyte per region. But we do see a lot of smaller use cases, and low power wide area drives that very much, where it's how many messages they have per device. What we also see though as well, because of the combination of device management and connectivity that we bring, is that we essentially have the price per message that routes through the device application, but then also the cost of doing this on the cellular network. So we're very much driving towards a single business model that gives our customers the capability to have a package of transactions across their deployed estate. So whether or not that is a certain amount of megabytes, because some people like to think of it in that way, where it's per some messages, or it's an allocation of messages and then the capability to do a number of firmware downloads over a month or a quarter. It's very key though at the moment that it's still, business models and connectivity are changing. You look at Sigfox and what they did per messages. You look at what Once did in terms of disrupting the price model for 10 years for 100 megabytes. But none of them not one business model will hit the sweet spot. So you have to still remain this agile player that can satisfy the traditional methods that were built on before, that they trust, that they use, and then the new models where people actually don't even want to consider connectivity as a cost. They want to think about it as a device.
Yeah, well, eventually connectivity becomes a feature rather than a product in its own right. That's how I see the space developing. I want to stick with you. eSIM, you mentioned eSIM. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the technology capabilities and so on. And I think we pretty much understand what happens with that now. How do you see it changing the competitive market dynamics, though? You may well have touched on this in your session earlier, which I wasn't party to, unfortunately. But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So from the competitive side, there's a lot of players in the market that are all touting traditional systems, permanent roaming, global roaming solutions, multi-IMSI. eSIM comes along to offer a capability of localization. Now, I think from the competitive market, it does shift the power away towards, as David said, the buyer. And that's the benefit of it. It gives that power and capability towards the end user. They have more flexibility, that they're able to change, they're able to localize, they have a more flexible solution. And I think almost every opportunity or customer conversation that we have at the moment, people are looking at the fingers that they've had burned in certain regions like America, or changes in some of the roaming environments in the US or Turkey, Europe, or in Turkey and Canada, and they're really saying, I will only pick a vendor who can deploy me on an eSIM. They may not actually utilize the capabilities of eSIM. They may just use a standard roaming profile on an eSIM, but it's that flexibility to change in later on. We're finding that, you know, it's only been the last 12 to 18 months that's happened. The market's happened because people have come around. You know, I don't know if it's COVID that accelerated so much digital transformation, but a lot of people have come out of the gates running straight into eSIM with their next generation of products. It is a fundamental technology that can really innovate into IoT, but like David said, it's complex. You've got to have a hell of a lot of moving parts. The contracts behind it are very onerous. A lot of commitments to operators, SIM providers, RSP providers. Does an enterprise want to take that on themselves? Some of them will. You know, similar to something like mobile private networks. Some enterprises are going to want to own a core and own infrastructure to do this. But I think the 90% that will do the scale of IoT don't want to think about that.
Won't want that. I'm going to stick with eSIM. Actually, it strikes me that the companies that have embraced eSIM far more readily are the MVNOs rather than the mobile network operators, because I think it allows them a lot more flexibility. It allows them a lot more capabilities. Is that fair? Actually, David, I'm going to come to you because we've heard.
Yeah, so it was exactly what I thought about. So,
David, I'll ask you that question.
So that was a good question, because I just thought about it. Because I had a number of years on an MNO before I joined the JT, which now is JT IoT, and we actually deployed eSIM solutions also, but we didn't have any profiles then, because we only wanted to focus on our profile, because that was the whole business model. It was about a roaming business model, get as much traffic as possible on one profile. And I think that is what big MNOs are trapped in. They're trapped in this demand that you need to sell your profile. That's our business model. That's what we live for. And IoT is so small part of the big cake. So when you go up and say, I want to invest in another MNO's profile, it's just question mark in your head. So I think this is the market for the MVNOs play, is to use it, because we are looking at a number of profiles, and we go to MNOs and they don't really understand this business yet. And still eSIM has been there for like 5 years. So I think this is an opportunity for companies like that want to enter this market to use this position right now.
Yeah. It feels to me, can I just interject, and then I'll come to you. It feels to me like network operators, if they were able to collaborate and allow sort of interoperability and interlocalization between them, could eliminate the need for having any kind of virtual network operators at all, because they can provide connectivity based on localized capabilities. But the evidence is from alliances that we've seen in the past, they're just not very good at working with each other.
I think
no, and you have sorry,
I was just to say, David, just to add on, like, I think the operators traditionally are valued by the number of subscriptions they manage. You know, that's their valuation. They put on revenue on top of it. An MVNO gets valued as a technology player looking for differentiation on top of it. So you find that the MVNOs try and move faster, move quicker into new technologies like eSIM, and they have a more natural position into doing that. There are operators, you know, like yourselves, like Tele2, like Telus, who are also moving into the eSIM space because they see a real open market to address their marketplaces. One of the key things with eSIM, though, and like connectivity regulation, is that if you're an operator operating in your own backyard, like let's say someone in Asia, and you start to try and sell connectivity from profiles into different markets, different countries, the regulation of doing that as an operator is far, far higher than it is for some of the MVNO players, because of the equipment and the infrastructure they do to serve their consumer market and consumer business. So I think that key point also talks about why some of the MVNOs can move a bit faster. You know.
Fair enough.
And
Sylwia,
also,
I was just
sorry, distinguish when you talk about eSIM, whether we're talking about consumer eSIM or M2M eSIM, because obviously there's different levels of advancements in this. So eSIM for consumers, so that's smartphones, tablets, and so on, wearables, is already going ahead and has quite a wide support across a number of operators. Versus M2M, it's slightly behind, and it's on automotive, utilities, and a few other aviation, for the lack of other examples, verticals that actually deploy it. But then also GSMA is currently working on the network and user constrained devices specifications. Obviously, this is to do with those devices that do not have an interface. And particularly if we move into the low powered area, so massive IoT in the future with release 16, this is what's going to be really valuable to do. So I think eSIM, as same with 5G, there's multiple different ways of looking at it. And yes, operators are working on it. And there's quite a lot of different guidelines and ensuring that they can work together, and that work is being carried out by GSMA.
And what about the question of changing the competitive landscape? How do you see that playing out, Sylwia? You obviously see this eSIM space quite a lot. So do you see it changing the market dynamics a lot?
I mean, there are operators that are supporting that. We see Orange that doing quite a lot in this space. And also, when we look at SIM, eSIM in general, we actually done a piece of work with Pelion looking at how enterprises are viewing eSIM. So it's not only the ability to be able to easily switch operators that enterprises value, they also value the device to cloud security that SIM or eSIM or iSIM can bring. So it's not only about it could change competitive landscape in a way that it can bring in security as a trust element, right? So this is different ways of looking at this. If you think about number one priority when it comes to IoT security, and you have SIM or eSIM or iSIM in the future, that is being part of it, it will change the landscape because you can easily deploy a secure solution that is out of the box. Well, not end-to-end, because nothing is end-to-end ever, but it is much easier to do so.
Okay, so you've spoken to, and can I just jump in on that, and then I'll let somebody else.
Okay.
You've talked to enterprises about eSIM then, Sylwia. What is their perspective? Is there interest in it? I mean, hypothetically and in practice?
Yeah, so when we asked, and there was a quantitative survey, when we asked enterprises whether or not they're familiar with eSIM, 85% of enterprises that said that eSIM will be important to their future success in IoT deployment. And as I mentioned, they expect eSIM to deliver not just the basic traditional capabilities, the switching of operators and so on. And what is quite interesting is obviously when we think about security, IoT security, eSIM, IoT Safe, all the work is currently undergoing around IoT Safe, so ensuring this easy, root of trust element, it is very, very important. And I think, automotive will have a different requirements, and eSIM in M2M has been driven mostly by manufacturing and automotive per se, but whatever works. So I think every single time I talk about IoT, is not all about technology, it's about what is the value. If eSIM brings value to your business and can help you achieve the different results, the results that you want, it will be deployed. If not, it will not be deployed. The same when we talk about massive IoT, low powered area, 2G, 3G networks being switched off, at some point they will have to be moved onto LTM and VIT. So it's a natural progression of the industry, right?
Okay, good stuff.
So if I may add, from my perspective, the enterprise ask for it right now, for sure. And I see two motivations basically for this ask. The first one is a kind of insurance model. So as you've said, the capability to switch from one MNO to another for different type of reasons. It can be to expand in new geography, or to change for better prices, or so it gives some more purchasing power to the enterprise. So basically this is the first motivation. And second motivation is that with this type of insurance, to be able to change profile over the air, this give this removes the barrier to integrate the SIM deeply in the module or deeply in the device. And integrating the SIM in the module or in the device removes some logistic constraints for the enterprise. Supplying the SIM from one MNO, supplying the module or the device from an OEM is always tricky when you consider that you have to do that for as many geographies as you need. And so the logistic constraint is something which is real currently. And I've not seen so many enterprise asking to switch from one profile to another. So enforcing this type of insurance mode. I've not seen so many enterprise enforcing that. However, I see many enterprise already enjoying this logistics simplification and having the capability to source a module or a device with embedded SIM and have this capability to activate it remotely very easily with the so-called zero-touch provisioning. This is something which is really beneficial for the enterprise and would trigger wide eSIM adoption.
But does it change behavior? That's the question. Does it change behavior of those enterprises in terms of who they buy from and what they buy?
Absolutely. So I can speak for CR Wireless, at least. On CR Wireless side, we have decided to integrate the eSIM in each module that we sell. So we do not supply one module on one side and one SIM on the other side, or our customers do not have any more to source or to order the module from Sierra and to source a SIM from their mobile network operator. We can source one single device, and this simplifies the logistic for the enterprise. So definitely this changes the behavior on their side.
Okay, so more demand for vertically integrated offering. Niall, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, completely. It completely resonates. I think the push and positioning of eSIM over the last few years has really just driven the change in buying behavior. We also feel that when we're speaking to our partners, and some of them are cloud providers, is that they're being asked for it and they have they're unsure where to go as well. So it's definitely coming in from all angles.
Okay. I want to make sure this isn't just an eSIM panel, but sorry, David, was that you wanted to jump in just there?
Yeah, I would say that one part that we miss in the benefits of eSIM is that it can create new type of business opportunities for the enterprise, because I usually describe these two different. You have the linear way of sourcing SIM. You produce them and they are in the device until the end, and you cannot change. And you have the circular way of doing it, and that can give new business opportunities for the enterprise. You can change profile depending on data or location or technology or whatever. And I think that's more flexibility for the enterprise to have that capability.
Okay, interesting. Right, we've got 1 minute left, and there was a topic I wanted to touch on, which was around hyperscalers, impact of Microsoft and AWS on this market, on the competitive landscape. Anybody want to volunteer to take a stab at that?
Yeah, so I can start that. I see this eSIM, that's the subscription model. You only look at the SIM. You don't look at the data layer. How will you handle the data layer when you have changed the profile? And this is seen by Azure and Amazon and a lot of players. This is a growing market based on eSIM that it's hard to manage the data. I think it's a perfect market for the hyperscalers in between here. That's more or less to simplify this connectivity.
And will they dominate the market? I don't know, Sylwia, have you got a perspective on that? Whether Microsoft and AWS are going to start dominating the commercial relationships for IoT?
So when we run the enterprise survey, and 21% of enterprises see the likes of AWS, Google, and Microsoft as the first choice provider for full IoT solutions, so that they go to market. And I think two things I want to highlight is, number one, the importance of developers and making sure that the solutions are actually accessible, and developers can develop the solution. So being pre-integrated, integrated in AWS is very, very important. And number two, edge. So mobile compute, edge computing, this is growing and we're not going to go away. So there's also partnerships, bringing back to operators, between operators, the likes of AWS and so on. As we going to enter the 5G era, MEC is going to be super important and super key, especially as we talked about the private 5G as well. So, there are they have disrupted IoT. They're making it easier to deploy, but they cannot do it alone, right? So it's always all about partnerships, all about collaboration, and one player. It's really hard for someone to do it end to end.
Excellent. On that note, our time's up. I need to hand things over to Dario, I think, who's going to be joining us now on the panel. There we go. He's here.
Hello, everyone. It's a quick hello, but it's for doing something very important, which is say thank you, all of you. So thanks, Matt, for managing these and other panels as well. Thanks, Sylwia, for being with us on two sessions, and then thanks to Niall, David, Benoit. But I'm telling you, all of you, thank you in representation of the 30 different speakers we got today. So that's been a fantastic day, and I hope we can continue that. I've been a great listener for all the day, and I think that we could have continued even these sessions for another 30 minutes.
Oh, for sure.
That's great. So with that, I'll thank you, and I'll probably come to a close for the day, and we will talk about, you still have time, by the way, to fill in that poll in case you haven't done on what else needs to be done in the industry. So thank you all, and I would like to say I'll see you all to the next MEF Connects Mobile IoT. Well, shortly, but I don't need to scare my team, but still have got a few more months to plan it in advance. So thank you all, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.